Hey, welcome everybody. Let's talk real estate. Your weekly BS with Barry Saywitz about the current commercial real estate market here in Southern California. As we take a no BS look at both sides of the issues driving this market today to find the best solutions going forward. With our man right in the middle, it's Barry Saywitz. Hey, Barry.
Hey, good morning, Paul, and good morning to all of our viewers and our listeners out there. I am Barry Saywitz, president of the Saywitz Company, managing partner of Saywitz Properties, and today is our year-end 2025 year-in review show. We're going to take a look back on where we've been and take a look ahead on where hopefully we're going to. It's crazy to think that we've been doing this show now for more than 4 years.
Really?
And if we go back to the beginning, and we've done almost 100, I think 175 shows now, right? So I don't know if we're eligible for like
Hall of Fame.
the radio Emmys or whatever they do, right? Or but I feel like we've come a long way since the beginning. When we first started doing the show, it was the middle of COVID, and there was no one in the entire building, and you had to wear a mask until you sat down. And Paul wouldn't touch me, wouldn't shake my hand, and made me use hand sanitizer before and after I
still
touched
don't.
it. Yeah, I know. Well, you don't know where I've been, but here we are today, and it's 2025 going into 2026. So I thought what we do for today's show is take a look at this year at least, and then what's happened, and try and take a look at have we made some progress in certain areas, and then what lies ahead. And so, Paul, I guess I want to go back to the beginning of the year, because if we rewind, Trump takes office, right? So big changes from a political standpoint.
Yeah.
The economy at the beginning of the year struggling, Bidenomics not working, stock market struggling, interest rates highest they've been in recent years, right? And inflation super high, cost of goods super high.
Feeling not good.
Nobody feeling good about it, and then people thinking, okay, Trump's going to get in office, and we'll get a change, unless you're not a Trump fan, and then you think it's going to get even worse, right? But they start making changes right away, right? Big changes,
Dramatic changes,
and then the question is that stuff going to work, right? So some of it starts to work, and then you got all these outside factors. You've got Ukraine and Russia. You've got Israel and Hamas,
Which we all thought, oh, this is going to go away quickly. Really
Right.
didn't. None of it. We're all still struggling with that. The one that struck me, and whatever your political views on all this stuff here, I didn't know we were going to get into this tariff thing, and on, off, up, down, change, this kind of constant change. We're still kind of facing that thing. And doesn't that create a certain amount of uncertainty in the market?
Well, I think that's the key word, right? If you look at 2025, I think if you were going to ask me one word to describe the year, would be uncertainty.
Yeah.
Right? Uncertainty of volatility, uncertainty of where we're headed, understand where we want to go, where we'd like to go, and then a struggle to get there. And then, look, I feel bad for President Trump and for the people that are trying to make strides to push things forward, because there's such an upheaval, whether it's from Democrats or whether it's from outside factors around the world, or whether it's just I have 100 problems that I'm trying to deal with on any given day. And it's hard as a guy who runs a business and puts out fires all day. I make a list every day, try and check some things off the box, and try and make the list go away. You can't solve the world's problems or your own problems in a day. You got to work
But some
at
of
it.
that, in fairness, was the administration with an unclear path. What was the purpose of tariffs? Were they short-term? Were they long-term? And I think the market is still trying to, I think they're still trying to figure it out. I'm not sure they have a clear definition of where they're going. I'm struck by one of the facts that I've read over and over again. Biden people are saying to the Trump people, be careful what you say or what you wish for. The last couple of years, Biden kept saying, hey, the economy is better than you think it is. We're living in the wind chill effect. It's not as cold as it feels out there. And that public didn't buy that. As you said, all the things you listed. Now that's kind of coming back to the Trump administration. Is it as cold as we feel it is out there still? Affordability, prices, uncertainty and stuff here, or following their view like Biden saying, hey, it's not as bad as you think it is?
Yeah, you look, you have to break it down, right? I think number one, you have to look, let's start with the world economy and then the world factors, which I'll call it China, I'll call it Russia, I'll call it the Israel Hamas situation, right? Iran, all that stuff, right? I mean, Has any of that really been solved? I mean, you don't hear a lot about the
I don't
Israel
think so.
Hamas thing because Hamas is sort of destroyed, but there is no plan for
Rebuilding.
a rebuilding. There is no plan for governance, right?
Right.
And then you've got all the Arab countries that are, it's like a hot potato. Like, I don't want to touch it.
In a world like that, anything could happen because, as we found, when it isn't enough just to break an opponent, as we did in Iraq. If you don't replace it with something better, chaos, something worse can come out of it. As Al Qaeda came out of, Iraq, you had all these ISIS and all these other things came out of our attacks on trying to get one group. We got a worse group that comes out.
Yeah, well, look, and then you've still got to watch out for what's going on at home, right? So you need to be safe, and you need to make America safe, right?
Right.
But at the same time, you've got China, you've got the tariffs, and those are all affecting the economy. So, again, I'd love to be a fly on the wall when these guys are kicking it around in the White House, but
Right.
you've got to make the economy strong. You've got to get a handle on inflation. You've got to get interest rates a little bit lower. And then you've got to get people feeling good about the economy. And then you can take that to go force your will on other people. I think the problem is you just tried to do too much at once. And there's only so many things you can do in a day.
And isn't consumer confidence at an all-time low again here, like back when it was COVID or something?
I don't know if it's as bad as that, but I think it depends
It's
on
low.
which segment of the population you talk to, right? If you
Right.
talk to Democrats, then they would tell you, hey, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad, because you're trying to paint a picture that it is maybe worse than what it is because you're trying to set up for midterm elections that are
Right.
coming up. And if you talk to Republicans, they'll all tell you, hey, it's way better than it was, certainly better than, when Biden was in office. And we actually have a leader who's, there and we have a plan. The issue is implementing that plan to get it going. And I think, and I hope, that part of this for 2026 really stems back to what happens with the Fed. And as much as interest rates, short-term interest rates, Fed interest rate really doesn't do a ton in terms of the average person that is out there. While
Right.
it does reduce your credit card interest rate, I mean, if you have a 26% interest rate on your credit card debt and it goes to 25 or 24, it's not going to make or break your world,
No.
right? But if the perception is that we are going into a lower interest rate environment and that the administration was successful in being able to do that, then I think that will fuel more confidence in the economy. It will fuel more investors to get off the dime and do things, and it'll spur banks to get out and try and
Well,
lend
that's
money.
why I brought up the consumer confidence thing, because that's just a feeling. And so much of the economy is based on a feeling. Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Should I contract my spending? Should I expand my spending? Am I feeling comfortable? Am I feeling uncertain here? And I think you said the key word. As much as we thought, win, lose, or draw, whether you voted for the president or not, there seemed to be a very clear path. We're going to do certain things very quickly and eliminate uncertainty. And if anything, I think we're just as uncertain as we were a year ago.
Well, and also it applies to different segments of the population. So if you're one of those people that invested in the stock market at the beginning of the year, and now you fast forward to where you are at the end of the year, the stock market's at an all-time high. You've made money on paper. You feel good. I
Right.
talk to people and they go, hey, my stock portfolio's up. I feel good. I go out to dinner. I spend money even though it's not real on a piece of paper,
Right.
but I feel good about
Exactly.
it. And right. But what people also don't understand is less than 10% of the entire population in the United States is invested in the stock market.
Clearly, yeah.
So now you have to look at the other 90% of the people who go, I could really care less about what happens in the stock market. I care about what happens at the pump. I care about the cost of eggs and bread and
Right.
those kinds of things. And so then you have to look at it and go, okay, well, where's the cost of gas? Like, let's break that down, right? So I got to tell you, I mean, on the way here, I looked at 4 or 5 different gas stations, and they ranged from $4 a gallon to $5.20 a gallon.
Yeah, we're
right?
back
There's
around-
just, and that's in Orange County and Los Angeles.
Right.
It's even more expensive. And then you look at other parts of the country where gas is like $2.50 a gallon. So when you look at the overall broader population, I think if you took a poll around the country, people would say gas prices down, except for California. And so
here, clearly.
no, California's an anomaly. I mean, that's a different show on a different day. But overall, gas prices down, right? Overall, egg prices down. Overall,
So
milk
how does
prices
that affect?
down.
You're on the front lines. You're dealing with people, in many cases, struggling to pay their rent or resisting rent increases or just whatever. You talk to tenants. That's your business. You're renting people property.
Well, yeah. So
So
again,
what are they saying to you?
Look at people. Everybody's struggling. People want raises so they can get more money because the only way they can afford their expenses is to get paid more, right? And
Right.
so then, therefore, people go out and they look for jobs that would give them more money, right? And then the job market is just not that great, right? And it's not like there's an abundance of extra jobs around. And then, secondly, the grass is always greener. While you might get more money, it might not be that great of a gig. And so, you got to balance money with I hate what I do, or I hate
Or
my
I gotta
boss, or
drive
I hate
farther
my
to get
country,
there, yeah.
my company, or
My country, my
country.
company. I hate everything.
Right. I mean, and so, then what do I cut out? So now you have people that are combining families, right? So you have more people living under one roof to try and save money, and that's another alternative solution. But then you have to look at the companies and say, okay, so what does a company do, right? I have rising costs of insurance, I have rising costs of operations, rising cost of utilities, rising cost of labor, rising cost of construction, maintenance costs more, whatever I've got in my business. Everything's up, nothing's down,
Nothing's
right?
down.
And so if nothing is down, my cost of doing business, greater strain, the only thing I can do is raise my prices. Whatever it is that you make or deliver, I have to raise my prices to combat that. And then therefore fuels this inflationary situation. And
I'll give you one little simple example. So, as your listeners know, I have one rental house that I inherited out in the desert. I rent this house. And I got my annual taxes. So I have a little higher insurance because it's a rental property. I can't just, not just regular home buyers. It's I have to renter's insurance or whatever, special insurance. And a couple of years ago when we started the show, it was about $2,500 a year. I just got the new bill. It's close to $6,000 a year, $5,600. And I thought, whoa. So where is this? How am I feeling? I'm feeling suddenly, oh my God, my property.
and that goes right to the bottom line. Look, there's no return on that, right?
right.
You didn't get any benefit from that.
None.
Right. And so then you have to look at all the other things that go into owning a piece of property or owning a home, right? My landscaper raises my prices.
All of
My
that.
my janitorial service at my office building raises the prices. Edison, the utility company, raises their prices. The gas company, the trash company, right? And so there's nothing where you go, oh, you know what? This is actually cheaper than it was before.
Yeah.
Not a single thing.
Right.
Not a single thing. And so how do companies then survive with that? And I would just say, hey, look, there's so many pressures on a company and their bottom line that unless you're in a high growth mode, unless you're in the tech industry or you've developed something new, it's very difficult. And so that brings me to my next point, which is if you look back at the beginning of the year and you look where we are today, lots of consolidation. Right. So the big news of the day today is this Paramount, Netflix,
Yeah.
Warner Brothers little fiasco,
Right.
And whether the president's involved, and whether his son-in-law was involved, and whether it's a monopoly for either company to buy them. But the underlying factor here is that you have major studios in Hollywood consolidating. Why? Because you have some very wealthy people who want to build the monopoly board, and there's economies of scale to do it, and there's a fight for return on the bottom line. Now, is
And
that good for the consumer? It's not good for
No.
the consumer. But as a company, you have struggling companies that are ripe for acquisition. You look at CNN. I think they were looking at selling it for like $50 million, and it was worth $1 billion at one point, right?
yeah.
And so
Remember the days of Time Warner when Time
Yeah.
Magazine and Warner merged and AOL came out on top of those were heady days.
But you see that, and you see it in the entertainment industry, and you also see it in the banking industry, where we've had many smaller regional banks get gobbled up by other banks,
Yeah.
because they basically just couldn't turn it, right? And then the exit strategy is I'm just going to cash out of my stock, and then I'm not going to keep beating my head against the wall, which then relates back into the real estate world, where you have people that are older in years, or you have the father or the grandfather passed away, and he's the one who actually built the portfolio, and now the kids or the grandkids say, you know what, I'm not dealing with this.
Exactly.
I'm just going to sell it. And then so there's turnover, but at the same time, you don't have this market dynamic where you look at it and go, gee, the real estate is a good investment, at least here in Southern California, where it actually pencils on paper. And
Right.
which is why you see this outflux of deals into places like Tennessee and Nevada and
Right.
Texas and Michigan, where there's better returns. And while you do not have the
Appreciation.
appreciation that you would particularly get in California, you also don't have the regulation, right? And you don't have this uncertainty of what's the government going to require from me now. You don't have this uncertainty in Texas that you're going to have earthquake insurance or fire insurance, and your insurance is going to go up 400%.
Florida, I don't know why nobody's investing heavily in Florida, because they're having the same insurance crisis we're having with earthquake. I mean, we're worried
Except that
about
the dynamic in Florida is that the cost of the real estate there in most instances is far less than it is in California. So while it's still a heavy burden, it's easier to pencil there, right? And so from a state tax standpoint, you have no state taxes.
So do you think you'll see more consolidation? It's one person on your show were talking about property management groups coming together, and this guy had spearheaded the consolidation of number. I never thought of property management
Yeah,
groups
it's economies of scale. I mean, there's
Yeah.
no question that you have economies of scale, and that it's more difficult for the mom and pop guy to make it. And so if you look at, historically, you have a mom and pop investor would buy a duplex or a
Right.
fourplex, and then you trade up to an eightplex or something. That's what you did, right?
Right.
The interesting thing is that to buy a fourplex, I was looking last night online here in Orange County. The cost of a unit in a fourplex is exponentially higher than if you bought 8 units, because it is a commercial property with a commercial loan, different financing, and then just different pricing. And so it's almost better for you to buy 8 units than 4, but if you can't afford 8 units, you're stuck with 4. And then when you go buy the 4 units, it doesn't pencil. There is no cash flow. You're
Yeah.
only buying it for the appreciation, yet people continue to buy it because they believe in real estate. They
Right.
believe that long term it's a good play, which I do too. It's just that the days of I'm trying to get if you're okay with no cash flow, then I guess do it. But if you're somebody who says, look, I need some cash flow, right? I could buy stocks, I could buy bonds, or I could buy in Texas and get some cash flow, or I could buy here and get no cash flow and risk that my insurance goes up
So
300%.
what are the two
Then
places?
what do I do?
If I go to Texas, it's a lower regulatory thing
Well,
and a lower cost, but I'm not looking at so it's a cash flow play. It's not about the property's going to appreciate.
Yeah, and then
value.
again, you also have to look at that for the average person. If you were going to go live in Texas, would you have a better quality of life than
That's
living
the
in
key.
Southern California? And then I say you would from an economic standpoint. Gas is cheaper, groceries cheaper,
Taxes are
labor's
cheaper,
cheaper,
yeah.
taxes cheaper, cost of a home on average is cheaper. All those things cheaper, but you have to live in Texas. And if you're okay, and you look, that's why a lot of people live in Texas. They're like, I like Texas.
Bunch of California snobs here saying, I don't know if and that's a real deal. I hear people all the time. I've talked to you off camera and said, okay, so you complain about all the problems here. Why not just go to Texas? And you say, some of my friends have looked at it, and they come back and say,
I have some of my friends that went there, and then they said, "Look, here's I have a better quality of life, and I can come to California and visit, and then leave, right?" And so it's no different than going to New York City. I love New York City; it's a
Right.
great city. I love going there, and I also love leaving, right? And so it's kind of like Vegas, right?
But I don't see a rush to do that among the investor class here. And maybe a little bit, but I don't see a rush to selling the capital, fire sale, get it out. Let's go someplace where it's cheaper,
Right,
less regulated.
And now you have to look at this whole influx that we had in years past with Asian money
Yeah.
coming here. Really don't see it so much anymore.
Right.
And
that
so,
artificially changed the market. They didn't care what they were paying for. They just had to get the money out of China.
yes, but that's over, right? So there's a lot of things over, right? The whole fix and flip is over.
That's
the whole
over.
I buy a house, I live in there a year, I make some upgrades to the kitchen, and then I sell it and get something bigger. That is over.
Right.
Right, because the issue is if I have a lower interest rate on my house and I have to trade it for an interest rate that's double what I'm paying, I've doubled my mortgage. Why would I do that? Right, I'm just taking money off of my spendable income, so I wouldn't do it.
And what about the days of high-rise commercial office towers? Is that
Yeah.
over?
So that is also over, at least for the moment, because you have high rises across the country converting to what I'll call multi-use, which is part hotel, part condo, right? Part apartments, part retail, and then part office. Why? Because there's just no office demand.
And because of your show now, I periodically look at the Wall Street Journal, Investors Daily, or something, and talk about deals, not just here in California, around the country. Office towers that were worth, pick a number, $100 million, a couple $100 million, selling for half price.
Yeah.
It's cities all across America. That model.
Well, look,
doesn't seem to be
here's a
working.
big example here in Southern California of an Irvine company who's the largest office landlord.
Yes.
Sold basically everything they own in downtown San Diego.
That's the one I saw. Yeah.
Talk about punting on an entire city and just saying I can't make this
Including
work.
the big. Don't they own the biggest tower in
Yeah.
downtown San? And they sold it.
Well,
for,
they owned a bunch, and they sold it for a fraction of what they paid. Took the tax hit, probably offset the income they made in other areas, and
Right.
so there's a tax play there. It's not just I don't believe in San Diego or I can't make it work, but I mean the value of those properties traded at a market value, which is substantially less than what they paid, and so you have to look at that. And then the guy who buys it has to put in substantial capital and retool it, because if the largest landlord in Southern California can't make it work, why are you going to make it work?
Yeah, everybody thinks I'm a genius. I'll do something they couldn't do, but I don't know what that is, other than they bought it at a lower cost and therefore maybe can figure out a way to make it work. They think cheaper rents or other things.
Yeah, so you look at the industrial market. The industrial market, you go back to the beginning of the year, was actually the highest. It's just coming off of this super high.
That was the one I was going to go to next. I replayed some of the episodes in preparation for this one. I listened to some of the things
You
were
actually
predicting.
prepared for the show?
I actually did. And one of the things you were talking about is this can't stay. An industrial property can't be worth more.
Can't hunt, right? I mean, and it didn't hunt, and it's not hunting. Right? So somebody
The
emailed me.
hunt's over.
Somebody emailed me last night and said, we talked to a friend of ours who had a facility in Riverside in the Inland Empire,
Right.
and that they signed a lease on a big industrial facility, and they got a year worth of free rent. Now, if you'd rewind to a year or two ago, I would have told you there was like no free rent or 1 month free rent, right? And so then the guy says, well, does that apply in Orange County by the beach? And I said, no, it doesn't. It's not the same. It's no different than buying a house in the Inland Empire versus buying a house by the beach. They're different submarkets, and they don't apply. But rates are down, concessions are up, demand is down, and a company cannot fathom paying that. Yet you have new industrial buildings that are being built where they tore down either an old office building, because the return on that is still better
Right.
than having an office building. And so you still have this whole, I get back to just in college, my economics 101, which was supply and demand,
Right.
right? If you have high demand and low supply, carry that over from the industrial where you have higher vacancy, you have less demand. And while vacancy is not horrible in the industrial, the demand dropped and the vacancy raised. And so now the issue is, how long do I want to sit with an empty building when there's less people running around looking at it? And then on top of it, the people that are looking at it, some of them don't have great credit. And so do I really want to make a deal with them?
Any little niches that we're overlooking? You had somebody I was fascinated. I forgot the name of the company now off the top of my head, and they deal in affordability housing, and the number of players that they bring in. There's the city maybe donates the land, and somebody else contributes it.
Yeah.
There's 45 different ways to finance these things. A very complicated structure, and yet it's a niche that we need. We need somehow.
Well, again,
low housing.
I think it'll be interesting over the next 24 months to see how this whole push for additional housing and affordable housing plays itself out, because that push came from Sacramento. That push came from the governor, who went to every city and said, we want you to build more residential housing. Right. So the problem with that is that you still have to have the free market where it still has to pencil. And so the
Right.
good news for a developer who's building...
Unless there's subsidies or other sorts of grants.
Right.
or
Well,
other sorts of-
so let's break it down. If you have affordable housing that's subsidized by the government, then that's one play. Those are difficult deals to do. Those are low margin deals and very paperwork intensive, right?
Right.
So you really need to know what you're doing, and the average person cannot do that. Those are specialty deals.
Right.
Now, then you go to, hey, I'm going to tear down a car lot, or I'm going to tear down an old office building or a retail strip center, and I'm going to build apartments. And I got to tell you, I drove all over Orange County yesterday, was doing property inspections myself, and I must have seen a dozen new construction, larger apartment complexes being built, coming soon, now leasing, under construction, right? And these are 50 to 100 to 200 unit apartment complexes. The issue with that is these are new, and so they're not going to take affordable housing unless they're deemed affordable housing. Secondly, they are not
or forced to as part of the
or forced to. But even if they do, it's
the
only a
entitlement.
small percentage
Right.
of those units. And then secondly, they are not subject to any rent control restrictions. They can charge whatever they want, and so it's a brand new place. They're going to charge the top end of the market, and so God bless them, and as they should, and they need to do that to cover their costs of construction. But the issue then becomes the person who's struggling to pay their rent. That's not going to be a deal for them. It doesn't
And
change
can
that dynamic.
everybody chase the small 10% at the top here? Doesn't somebody have to deal with the middle or the bottoms? Or-
Yeah, so you then go back to do I raise the rent? And if I can't raise the rent, or I don't want to raise the rent on my tenant, then I certainly cannot fix up the property. And so we have experienced it in our own portfolio where tenants just don't call. Right, they're afraid that if they call, that it's going to somehow come back to them, that they'll raise
Exactly.
the rent, right? Or, when you go and look at their apartment and they say, "Hey, I've lived here for 8 years and my carpet's dirty and it's old. Can you give me new carpet?" And then I go, "Well, yeah, but I mean, you want me to raise your rent, or you want me to try and keep your rent lower? And if you want me to keep your rent lower, maybe you clean the carpet, and then we
So
just
do
try
we
and
go
ride it."
back to that where we see, for a long time, you said your model is you go in and you really put the improvements in. You don't delay and defer and try not to do it and drag it out forever and ever, because the value of the property goes down at some point in time here. The infrastructure rots, it falls apart. It's not like it never needs to get replaced. And yet, do we go back to that day where everybody's going to defer, delay, not
Oh,
do
you are.
stuff?
Look, you see it. People who can't afford to do the work, they just don't do it. People who don't want to do the work, they just don't do it. People who have no pride of ownership, then they don't do it, right? There's a difference between an A product from an institutional owner
Right.
and then a B or a C product from a mom and pop person.
So we're going to see more of that, or is that going to get blown out and it's the consolidation is coming? It's all going to be a product. Or
Well,
mostly
then
a
the
product?
problem is that you have people who are willing to sell properties that have deferred maintenance, but they all want top dollar. And the perception is that if interest rates come down, I should be able to get more for my property. And I guess that'll be interesting to see as well as we go forward into the new year, and also this week in terms of what happens with the Fed. Everybody expects that they'll drop it, but I don't expect that that's just going to move the needle and get everybody off the fence. So.
No.
We'll have to see how those kinds of things play into it, and then you also have the lending environment. If the lending
So pull out
environment
the
gets better,
ball, the crystal ball, polish it a little bit. With
I-
2026, more uncertainty, same level of uncertainty. We seem to have been living with uncertainty since COVID. Every year, the common theme is we'll wait to see it next year, but right now it's uncertain.
yeah, I think you're going to see more of the same. I'd like to feel better. I think everybody would. I'd like to feel like things are moving in a positive direction, as everybody would. And I'd like to feel and think that whatever is good for somebody in one income bracket, that it flows to other people in other income brackets. I mean,
Right.
it has to at the end of the day. But
Because it's a dynamic system. It can't just be weighted towards the bottom or the top or whatever here. It's got to be a system that works for everybody here.
Yeah, but look, I think that lower cost of living, lower inflation, stabilized economy, stronger dollar are all things that benefit all people. You don't have to be invested in the stock market to
No.
realize those other things. Also, I think that job creation, which is one of the things you hear the president talking about, whether it comes to fruition or not, it's a good sales pitch, and I buy it. And everybody else should buy it, which is if the economy's stronger, companies grow. Companies grow, what do? They hire people and they compensate their people accordingly. And so you should want your company to do well. You should want there to be new companies coming on board, and you should want the companies that are out there to be successful.
I'd like to see not just stability, but I'd like to see predictability. You've even said if the market's down, then everybody can sort of deal with it. If for a while we understand what to do in bad times and in good times, we just don't know what to do in uncertain times, and that seems to be the volatility. On the one hand, things are up, on the one hand, things are down. On the one hand, things are getting better, on the one hand, things are getting worse. It seems to be this constant influx or flow of uncertainty. Which way are we going? When does it stabilize and we get a clear picture?
Yeah, I think the other thing you got to look at is look at the dollar, right?
Yeah.
So if you look back, and I did some research on this because I did some homework before the show too, which was where was the dollar, right? And so if you look back 12 or even 15, 18 months ago, the dollar on the euro was like $1.02, $1.04, right? And now it's $1.17, which doesn't sound like a lot to the average person, but that is a 15% swing, which basically means if you were going to go travel to Europe and spend your US dollars, then you would be spending 10 to 15% more than what you were spending a year ago, regardless of inflation, right? I mean, if everything went up in cost, then that's aside from the fact that my dollar is just not as strong as it used to be. And so I also, I mean, I like it when the dollar's strong because then you can travel and you can buy goods from other
Two
places.
more quick questions. We're way over in time here, but two more quick questions about predictability and about the coming year. How about slowdown for here in Southern California? Slowdown in the Canadians coming spending money, actually selling property. Palm Springs Airport talked about a decrease in travel. I've talked to agents out in the market because that's where I have my house. Canadians selling the property, just pissed off. I'm not coming
Yeah.
back here anymore.
Yeah.
Is that
Real.
going to have a real
It's
effect? on the
real.
market?
I think you're going to see it continue. The other thing I would add to that, if you look at the Canadian dollar against the U.S. dollar from a year ago, also up. The Canadian dollar stronger by 10 to 15%. So while they have greater buying power than they did a year or so ago, if you rewind, during COVID, their buying power was up 30%. So they're still off, and so I think you're going to see the same, more of the same, and so.
So in those travel markets like Palm Springs that relied on those snowbirds to come in, that's going to be
less.
continuing drag.
Less. I think you're going to see.
And then
less.
the other one that nobody talks about, 4 or 5 years ago, everybody was talking about again, particularly in a certain group in the Republican Party, the monetary people, debt. Debt seems to just never end. We're going to be at what? Say what you will about the president's policy, but he's not softening the debt. I mean, the debt's going to go up another at least another $5-10 trillion under his term here. It doesn't seem to. Nobody even talks.
But
about
I don't think
that.
anybody loses sleep over the national debt. I think they lose sleep over their own debt, right? And so you have to look at, in addition to national debt, the way you solve that is you got to get the economy cooking even better to pay down the debt.
Right.
But the other side of it is you have people's own debt, right?
And that seems to be rising again here too.
Yeah, and I
Credit
think
card debt,
yes.
the cost of everything.
All right. Well, look, if you don't have the money, what do? You go borrow, and then once you're tapped out, then now you're really in a difficult spot. And so you have people paying student loans at just paying the minimums, or credit cards just paying the $25 instead of paying it off.
When does this all come to a head?
I don't think there's a head. I mean, you got to look at the ebbs and flows of the economy. And then the issue is, do you have large swaths of the population truly struggling or not? And then, you can't believe what you see on TV. You can't believe what you read on your phone or your computer. You really got to understand all
That's what
these different
scares
dynamics,
everybody, yeah.
and you got to look in the mirror.
Last question that seems to be uncertainty: war. President came in loudly, said I'm going to stop all these wars. Didn't. Although he's loudly saying I'm the peace president and solved a bunch of things. I think we're still feeling an uncertain, unstable world. The Middle East, Ukraine, relations with China and everything. And now we might be compounding it by doing the thing he seemed to be totally against, another foreign intervention in Venezuela here.
Yeah, and I think you look at you have to. I mean, we have no time to go deep into it.
I know, but
it is wintertime in Europe, and then who supplies the gas to the rest of Europe, which is Russia.
Yeah.
And so theoretically it would be quiet in the wintertime while Russia gets whatever money they can get, and then all you can do is hope
'Cause it's
that,
frozen,
that
they
they're
can't fight.
working on some deal, and whatever that deal looks like, that at least there's a ceasefire to the killing and the bombings. But it doesn't appear that there's a quick and uncomplicated solution.
it just seems like we might even get more uncertain, because if we do invade Venezuela or try to topple the government, doesn't it? Tons
Yeah.
of people will flee, even more immigrants trying to flood out of the country, and it's just, again, as much as everything, whether it was Biden or Trump, said this is going to be different, the theme is it's still the same.
Yeah,
Uncertainty.
so I think keywords for 2026 are going to be uncertainty, volatility,
Right.
affordability,
Yes.
right? And then where are we headed? And people, if you watch the news and things, that they start talking about the midterms, which are still pretty far out, but certainly after the first of the year, you're going to see it heat up.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, I mean, that certainly will have an impact on things, but I think that you just have to take it one day at a time and then hope that you're taking forward steps. And I think for folks out there, you got to do the same in your own world, which is wake up in the morning, try and check something off your list, and try and take a step forward. I mean, there's no other way about it. There's no other way to do it. Otherwise, you'll lose sleep. Learn about all these other
I
things.
was
we're
trying
talking
to
about.
check off next year from my list here, but you've left me uncertain again.
Yeah, you're not going to do it. We're going to have to come back. We're going to have to come back and talk about it.
One more year.
Yeah.
Have to do it again.
So we'll bring some people in and we'll talk about some of these interesting topics and we'll delve into it some more. So I know we're out of time. Paul, again, thank you for another year of doing this and for everybody here at
Thank
the
you.
radio station.
Always a fascinating discussion. I tell more and more people about this show, what I learned from this show, and the hidden underlying trends that I see that prop up. Certainly here in Southern California, real estate's a big part of it.
Yeah, one of these days you'll be able to just do it on your own. You don't need me.
That's a ways off.
But I'm Barry Saywitz. Happy New Year to everybody. A healthy and prosperous 2026. We'll see you back here next year on Let's Talk Real Estate.
Well, there you have it. You've been listening to Let's Talk Real Estate, your weekly BS with Barry Saywitz about the current state of the real commercial real estate market right here in Southern California. On Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio, streaming live from our studio here at the University of California, Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.